Hey guys, what is going on? This is Travis P11. I'd like to welcome you back to the channel. And today we're taking the cordless drill to the range. I'm just kidding. We're taking the Hi Point JXP 10mm pistol to the range. We're just going to do a little range test with it, do a standing accuracy test, shoot some targets from about 10 yards away, and just see how well it performs. Ammunition for today's test, we've got 3 different brands. We've got some Remington UMC, that's 180 grain full metal jacket, muzzle velocity 1160 feet per second. We're also going to chronograph test this and run through the chrono and see what kind of velocity that 5-inch barrel produces with it, which is another nice feature that this particular pistol has. We've got some Sig Sauer 10mm 180 grain full metal jacket also. We'll check the ballistics on that. Looks like it says 1,250 feet per second. And then finally some Ammo Inc. Ammo Incorporated 180 grain. It says TMC. I'm not sure exactly what that stands for off the top of my head. I'll have to look. It is like a flat-nosed round, but we'll see how well this is going to run too. So I have not shot this pistol yet. I've only done a cleaning on it, and I've never really had any issues with Hi Point firearms in the past. I've fired them several times on the channel. I've owned several of them. And I'm pretty excited to get this one out there because this is a very popular model. But as you can see, the firearm has been cleared. It is flagged for safety, and let's go hit the range. All right, guys, so we're going to get started with some Sig Sauer 180 grain full metal jacket. And we're just going to do 10 rounds and just see how the gun runs. I'm going to let you know what it feels like, the ergonomics. It's definitely very hefty, that is for sure. And it's got a little weight to it. You know, it looks like from the videos I've seen, it's got a very slow slide actuation. It looks like it's very easy to control. Front side is huge, and so it basically covers up the red dot. I'm just going to cover up the red dot with the front sight. Might be a little more of a challenge for the 3-shot groups that we're going to shoot, but we'll be doing those 3-shot groups here in just a moment. All right, here goes nothing. Okay, we're good to go. It did go back to battery. I just wanted to double check and make sure. All right. Make sure my finger doesn't ride up on the slide here. Okay, it's got a little bit of kick to it. Looks like it's shooting to the left. Oh, maybe not. Wow. All right. Yeah, you definitely get a little bit of trigger slap there also when you shoot it. But it's going right where I'm pointing it. Very controllable. It's a little bit more stout than, say, a 45 or even a hot 40 Smith & Wesson round. Very controllable. I can feel that slide like chuck back in. When it goes back into place, I can actually feel it kind of physically reconnecting and hitting. So, yeah, interesting. Very interesting recoil pulse. Wow. There we go. She locked open on empty. Nice. Another thing I'm noticing is that on the grip, I can kind of feel it kind of digging into my hand, kind of cutting into my hand a little bit. Not the end of the world, but just something to make a note. All right, let's go ahead and put our precision target up, and we will do those groups of 3. All right, guys, here we go. We're going to do 3 groups of 3 of each type of ammo. Then we'll run this through the chronograph. We'll call it. It's freezing out here today. My hands are cold, but we're going to see how well she runs. All right, so we're just going for tightness of group, and here we go. Now, these are tiny dots. My front sight is covering up the dot completely, but we'll try to keep it on target the best we can. Okay, all right, moving over to the center target. Hate to say it, she's a pretty good tack driver. All right, here we go. All right, that first group looked pretty solid there. Okay, now we're going to switch over to the Remington UMC. We'll do 9 rounds of that, 3 groups of 3. We'll give you the average of all 3 groups once we get back to the house. There we go. All right, let's get started. Okay, she went into battery, no problems. Okay, now that feels much, much lighter than the Sig. Feels almost like it's about 20% less recoil. There we go. All right, move over to the center target. Accuracy suffering a little bit there. Okay, now move over to the right. Trigger's a little heavy, but you get used to it. I mean, it's just a solid press, and then, you know, you're good. So the group's opened up a little bit. All right, let's go ahead and run some of that Ammo Inc. 180 grain down the pipe, and then we'll move over to the chronograph. Be right back. All right, Ammo Inc., here we go. Good to go. Just double check and make sure it's in battery every time. All right, shoot our last group. This is about the same as the UMC in terms of recoil. Palms are getting a little sweaty now. Okay, last group. All right, see, we need a little more practice with it, but let's go ahead and run it through the chronograph and see how well it performs. Okay guys, we're going to go ahead and chronograph test it. We've got 4 rounds of 6 hour loaded up. The first one's just going to be a test round to make sure the chronograph's ready to go. The next 3 are the 3 we're going to measure, and we'll give you kind of an average of the speed. We'll go 6 hour, Remington, and then Ammo Inc. All right, so with the 6 hour, it should be running 1,250 feet per second. Let's see what she does. Okay, 1312. We are getting better than box velocity. All right, let's count the next 3. 1321, 1341, and 1321. That's a very good spread. All right, the next 3 rounds is Remington UMC running at 1160 feet per second. Let's see what she does. Again, 5-inch barrel. 1095, 1113, 1102. So it's kind of all over the place on velocity. And then finally, Ammo Inc. It is set at 1190 according to the box. I'll double check that when I can safely. So the firearm, right, here we go, last 3 shots. 1104, 1140, 1099. All right, the firearm is clear. And that's rated at 1190. Okay, so let's bring it back and talk about the average of our velocity here along with our groups. All right, let's take it back home. Okay, so we are back from the range. Let's just talk about the overall shooting experience, the accuracy. We've already showed you the velocity numbers. The barrel does produce pretty darn close to what the box is showing, and that's a good thing. You are getting full power out of that round. So anyway, 6 hour, first 10 shots, you know, my first shot was a bit of a flyer, and I thought, oh man, that's how the rest of these shots are going to go, right? Not at all. 2.4-inch group if you don't count the flyers. If you do count the flyers, obviously it's going to be way above 3 inches. But you can see how tight it was, how consistent it was. You know, I did complain a little bit about some trigger slap, what I thought was trigger slap. But really, it was just kind of that shock of the round, just because it is a very potent, powerful round. And if you're not used to it, you know, it does feel a little bit more than maybe what you're used to. But I did adjust to it by the end of the range session. I was very comfortable with the gun. So again, very accurate, very powerful, good velocity numbers. The SIG 180 grain ball ammo did perform. Now, again, using calipers, I'm just going to give you the 3-shot average of each of the types of the ammo. The SIG had a 3-shot average of 1.94 inches. The spread went from 2.75 inches to 1.462. Nice and tight, consistent. The gun was shooting pretty much where I was pointing it, but took my time. If I was careful and I was getting used to the trigger by the end of it, I did shoot some nice tight groups. Very easy to control. So the SIG is, just going to tell you right now, definitely the more accurate of the 3 rounds, but just barely. I do pay about, I think about $34 for a box of that. The Remington was about $34, $35, and then the Ammo Inc. was either $24 or $26.99 on sale at Scheels. Much lighter perceived round, the shock, the recoil, much lighter for the Remington and the Ammo Inc. Now, the accuracy for the Remington UMC was 2.32 inches, and the spread went from 1.618 inches to 3.2 inches. You know, and again, it's just one of those things where you just kind of get used to the gun. You're just shooting it for the first time. These were literally my first shots ever through this gun ever, right? And then finally, the Ammo Inc. 2.06 inches was the average of the 3 groups, going from 2.3 inches to 1.837 inches. Now, had I been sitting at a bench in a rest, it would have been much more accurate. I can guarantee it. Like I said, my hands were cold, just a little bit shaky, kind of warming up. It was like below 30 degrees out when I was filming. But again, we're just showing you what it's like, giving you a standing accuracy test in not the best conditions, right? I want to give you just kind of an honest viewpoint of how this gun's going to shoot. Now, something that was kind of unusual, and I don't know if this is going to show up in camera or not, when I was looking at my brass, you know, I always like to check and make sure there's no striker drag or anything like that, firing pin drag. Don't know if you can see this, but the actual mark of the firing pin on the primers is offset. It's offset by like 1/8 of an inch, maybe 1/16 of an inch from where it should be centered. Now, this is each of the 3 different rounds. This was not just a kind of a one-off thing. I don't know if you can see that. We'll try to bring it in for you here so you can kind of notice it. See how they're offset? There we go. They're not perfectly centered. They're actually kind of up towards the top. So obviously it didn't create any kind of an accuracy issue. I don't know if that's normal. If you guys have ever seen that before, let me know. Is it something to worry about? Should the gun go back? Should it not? I mean, it's not so high to the top of the primer that I need to worry, but it's also not optimal. And this is probably the first time I've ever seen this on a gun I've ever tested on the channel. Now you might say, well, I got a gun that does it all the time. Okay, well, I don't normally get that. You know, we see some firing pin drag, and really that's about it. But otherwise, we don't usually get that. So again, something that I just noticed. All right, so pros and cons of the gun. First of all, if you want to get into 10mm on the cheap, as I'm showing you, the ammo doesn't have to be super expensive to buy if you kind of look around a little bit. JXP 10 is definitely the way to go. I did have to hand tighten the thread protector pretty much after every magazine that went through it. Hand tightening it, maybe you can torque it a little bit more. I didn't want to damage the threads. Heck, you could just take off the thread protector when you shoot it at the range if you're going to do an extended session, and it's not going to be an issue. Obviously, Picatinny rail is really nice. Ergonomically speaking, it's a hefty beast. It does feel like you have a cordless drill in your hands the whole time that you're using it. I did file this part down a little bit with a Dremel just because it would poke into the webbing of my palm. I noticed that when I first did the unboxing of the gun, so that was fine. And what I thought was the back of the grip digging into my palm, it wasn't. It was just kind of that texture, combination of the texture, my cold hands, me not being used to the gun, etc. Again, these are things you might experience if you shoot this gun for the first time. Actually, the grips are nice and tight to the back strap of the gun, so there is no gap in there. There's nothing to worry about. Sights were fine. They're a little bit big. They did basically cover up the dot, which made it fairly easy for me to see where I was pointing, at 10 yards. And so not a big deal, but they are some fairly large. Now, that front sight is Glock compatible, so you can take it off and put a Glock front sight on there if you want to go with something different. Maybe you go with something fiber, something a little bit smaller, just a traditional white dot. The back, apparently Hi Point's going to come out with some plates that you'll be able to screw on the back there. And they will let you put an optic on the top if you want to. So I would like to try it with an optic and just see how it runs, just to see if it increases the accuracy, which is totally fine, or not. Trigger, I was getting used to the trigger towards the end. There's very little creep. It just basically hits a wall and then breaks. It is heavy, and your finger does kind of slide on it a little bit. It's very slippery. There's really not much of a texture on there for you, so it does take some getting used to. And my finger's just a little bit sore after putting all these rounds down range. You kind of feel that shock through the trigger when you shoot it. Not the end of the world, but it's just something you might notice when you take it out. The last thing, the recoil impulse, very hard to explain. So the feel is kind of like a 1911, right? You've got a lot of mass up on top that's moving. You notice it, or there's a little bit of, kind of some pull. But once the slide comes to a rest, you get like this second thud that you feel through the gun. It's like boom, thunk, boom, thunk. And that's just the slide, just that much mass coming to a rest at the end of the frame. Very funky. I've never experienced that before on another gun, or if I did, it was so light. It was just very, very, very hard to perceive. So for this gun, it felt weird after every time I did the shot. You can almost feel that slide just slowly reciprocating every time it would fire and go back into battery. Now I did push on the back of the slide just kind of as a habit. It didn't need it. The gun did go into battery every single time that I charged around. It was just, you kind of look at it, you think, did it go back in? Well, it's just because it's just so slow to move back and so slow to move back into place that you're just not used to it. So yeah, it does take a little getting used to. All these complaints aside, the gun did shoot really well. It was reliable. It ran all the different types of ammo, produced good velocity. You got the threaded. And if you want to put a suppressor on it, you've got the plate on the back for an optic down the road. You've got the pick rail. If you want to get into 10mm to see if you're going to like it or not, this is one way to start, right? So anyway, that's kind of my take on the Hi Point JXP 10. So this is Travis P11. Thanks for watching this video. We had a lot of fun putting it together, even though it was freezing out there. We're going to bring you a lot more range videos coming up here in the near future. Like and subscribe. Check out my podcast called Caliber Corner, which happens every Saturday at 8 a.m. over here on YouTube. Make sure you guys check it out. We talk guns and ammo. We have a good time. But in the meantime, everybody, I want you to have fun. I want you to be safe. Mash that bell so you don't miss any notifications. And as you know, we will talk to you soon. All right, guys, take care. Have a good one.